it's not a very rare story that parents try to do everything they can to save their child. It's kind of a black hole that you just sucked into at the moment of the diagnosis. As a father, you don't really listen when people say, yeah, there is an answer, but you're not liable to get it. So I did everything and I started working in a lab, and there was a moment of hope. But when winter came, her immune system couldn't make it, and I lost her. This nature of her has always been, smiling, positive, and taking it all. Is something that really drive me at that time. This energy of her is really something that is got us going in terms of continuing what we do even after her passing away. I think actually understanding that, all right, I'm doing this crazy thing and that's it. And that was kind of a first step, understanding there is hope. I think the use of gene therapy is part of this hope. The idea there is to implant a gene inside our genome. Basically, viruses has the ability to put their genes into us and kind of say things to our body. You add this gene, you add a few kind of engineered promoters, inhibitors to kind of direct it well, and then you just let the virus go and implant DNA into ours. And that's a very effective way to do that. The idea of viruses, I think, when you want to modify genetics, I would say it's the prevalent way. And it is perhaps, I heard somebody says, yeah, that's God's way to transfer genes.
Hi everyone, that's Renegade Science Podcast and your host, Marie Fuhr. In this podcast, I meet scientists and entrepreneurs that are developing groundbreaking technologies that do not fit in the box of traditional science. I talk to them about their work and areas of expertise and ask all the burning and stupid questions, the most important of which is, how do we build a great future powered by tech? Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and social media. My guest today is the CEO and co-founder of Noga Therapeutics, Noam Baumatz. Noam has a science degree from Brighton University. He led the complementary medicine unit at Sheba Hospital for 13 years and founded Beit Marpe, a chain of clinics that fosters community for both practitioners and patients. He is also a father of Noga, a girl who was born with an ultra-rare and fatal immunodeficiency disease. Ahmed's family started a lab to create a treatment for their daughter. Unfortunately, she died at the age of 2 before the cure was found. But Noam, together with his co-founders, started a company called Noga Therapeutics and now works on developing gene therapies for severe and chronic illnesses. Hi, Noam. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Maria. It's a pleasure being here.
So, you are a parent turned founder. I worked in this field for the last few months, and I know that this is, I would say, quite a common direction that parents become founders of biotech ventures because no one else cares as much about well-being and health of their children as parents, especially in the field of rare diseases. That can be ultra rare, as in the case of your daughter, Noga, when there are like 20, 30, 100 people in all world affected by this disease.
The truth is that, and I think it's a good start to our conversation because with Noga's case, she was all alone in the world. It is actually not such a rare genetic mutation, especially not in the Jewish community, but it is a very rare thing for a child to be born with this
Mm.
mutation. Most of the children don't survive the embryonic stage. So with Noga, she was strong enough to come to this world and to live beautiful 3 years. But definitely this world of rare disease and low prevalence of diseases is definitely something that is a big part of the problem.
So tell me this story. So story of your daughter and how you were fighting to find a cure for her.
Yeah, yeah. Noga was born with a rare disease. We didn't know it first, but about 10 months after birth, she started having those spastic abdominal pain, colitis, it turns out. And I think so about at the age of, let's say, year and 3 months, let's say, we found out that it is diagnosed as colitis, and then her doctor, who is a friend of mine, uh, sent me this article saying, "Yeah, you need to read that." And in the article, it says, "Yeah, with those cases with bowel disease, colitis, and other diseases of the intestine, when it happens at such a young age, that's not a good sign." And uh, and I think I read this. I don't think I know. I read this article. It was on my phone, and I was outside. I remember the place where I sat, and this is the moment that actually you read that it is actually a fatal disease, and the word death and this kind of state that actually you can lose your child. I think that is the moment it appeared, and yeah, and it took us another, I would say, 4 months to diagnose her syndrome, and which is very fast in terms of rare disease. I think that it can take about 6 years, I think, is the average until your child is diagnosed or you are diagnosed. And so it took us a few months, but the situation is more or less similar in all cases. If it took 3 months or 6 years, it doesn't matter, because most of the situation is that there is nothing to do from this point onward. It's not that life is not getting complicated. There is the daily stuff of taking care of your child, of going to the daily care, physiotherapy, and nurturing, and all of that. But really, in terms of hope, it's kind of a black hole that you just sucked into at the moment of the diagnosis. And, the first meeting with a genetic physician is something that was big, such a confusing and disappointing event, because really there's not much you can do. So yeah, and so it took us a few months to understand that she has this illness, and then another a month or so to understand that the only thing that can save her, which is a bone marrow transplant, is not something that they would give her, because she's too small and she won't handle the conditioning and the problem that arise in bone marrow transplantation. So actually, there's not much to do, and I instead of sitting at home, and I heard about gene therapy at that time, and I obviously I was informed of the this huge wave of medicine that comes over. But she was alone in the world, and the answer was, all right, perhaps there was something to do, but not with such a low prevalence. There aren't any kids in the world. So no, of course, there is no doctor that would, or a pharma company that would do something like that, even though it can actually save her life or give her a few dozens of 20 years or so. So, because as a father, you don't really listen when people say, yeah, there is an answer, but you're not liable to get it. So I did everything, and I got finance to do that, and I started working in a lab. She deteriorated at that time, so we were mostly at the hospital. And we were like that for about a year and a half, working in the lab at day and then at night, being in the hospital and trying to do something for her. And there was a moment of hope. But when winter came, she was just below 3 years old. And winter came, and she just her immune system couldn't make it, and I lost her. But I think unlike many rare disease, she didn't suffer much. She had colitis, which is a painful thing for a kid and for any person. And we were hospitalized a lot. About a year and a half of her life was in hospital. But she was not, she didn't suffer much, and she was a happy, optimistic creature with a good 3 years. That was kind of a whole life for her. And I think this nature of her has always been, smiling, positive, and taking it all, is something that really drive me at that time doing this. It's slightly insane when you think of it, at night you do this. You go there, there's going to be a trauma at that night. There's going to be something you do that you remember for your life. And in the morning you go and you work at your job. And so, yeah, but I think this energy of her is really something that is got us going in terms of continuing what we do, even after her passing away. And it's still in many sense behind our work at Noga. But in general, I think we were talking about rare disease, and I want to say something about that because it's a it's a it's a horrible moment, of course, for a parent to understand they might lose their child, and it's kind of unreal, becoming real when it actually happens. Yeah, it doesn't it feels from unnormal, but it's actually your life from now on. And but there is really this depression of having not much to do. And I think actually understanding that, all right, I'm doing this crazy thing, and see, and that was kind of the first step, understanding there is hope. And then I started joining all kinds of communities in the world of rare disease. And I started with a foundation called Global Gene. They are kind of an umbrella organization for many rare disease patients. And this thing of entering this field of rare disease world and foundation, it was really such a mind shift from being depressed as hell, sitting at home and having nothing to do, and then seeing this kind of huge vibrant energy of, let's see if we can do something. Let's make something out of this. And just like meeting, communicating and commuting. And so that was a mind-opening experience for me, and something that I wanted to be a part of. And in many sense, I'm still a part of because of that. I have no, I don't have a personal gain in the sense of I won't save my daughter, but this energy is something that builds on you. And I think me and many other physicians as well, they're addicted once they feel it. And the strong energy, and it's kind of an antidote of this world that most rare patients and their families live in. Let's say 5% of the world has a rare disease, and their family around them, it's 10, 15%. They just, they sit at home. It's It's a huge suffering. And actually, this and I think the use of gene therapy is part of this hope. But really entering those gates of the community of rare disease was a fascinating thing for me and really optimistic.
So, what role do you think can community play for people who have rare diseases in their family or they have their own rare disease?
Yeah, so I think except that really major thing of just finding people. Well, it's just the same stories, and I meet with the communities, and I think the story that I told you about, just reading this diagnosis, that's a that's a thing, that every patient and his parents and everybody has this really moment in their life, and I think just to meet people like you that are that have the same experience and that can really feel the same thing. You can, you can talk about it. You can. So that's an amazing thing. And then there are there, and I think so many things that they did for us, not only in terms of finding this family, but also, days with the kids, going to the parade. There, a clown is coming to your house, and he takes the kids, and everyone are having a good day somewhere. And then, so that's that. There's all the thing of rights and understanding the need. So I think there are different foundations. There are foundations who are interested in basically doing natural history things like registering, and this is one thing. And there are foundations who deal with your daily life, and that's another thing. And of course, those foundations who deal with your daily life, you get as a father, you get close to them. In my company, we're developing a product for a disease called X-linked gamma globulinemia. That's an immunity disease, kind of bubble boys, if you wish. And from a very early stage, we started kind of meeting the crew, meeting the kids, and I think this thing of going to the zoo together, or those small things are just incredible moments in my life. And yeah, so I think the daily stuff is definitely important. And then you've got the foundations that are research based, and they try to really create this hope for a kid to survive or to live a well life and a good life. And I would say there's about 5 to 10% of the syndromes have kind of an attempt to solve them, but it is only the beginning, and I think there's much, much to do in that. So I would say that communities are very important in so many ways, and but except the practical one, I would say just the idea of having a community. That's an amazing idea, and I think the more people are acquainted with that and they get familiar with such a world, yeah, it will be better for everyone.
I completely agree with you. I think that having a community and not feeling that you are all alone against this monster is super valuable and super supportive. And as a person, as a scientist, and as a person who is deeply immersed in this world of rare diseases, can you tell me, please, what are the current treatment options? Because I know that like 95% of rare diseases, they, at least in US, they do not have any approved by FDA treatments. So people need to be inventive and creative. So what are the options?
Yes, I would say, and I speak with a lot of parents. I don't know how many I met in my life. I'm always meeting and trying and seeing what is clinically available. So, and even if it's a research level, in my eyes, it is something that I want the father to know about it and the parents to know about it. That, yeah, there is a time barrier. There is usually a therapeutic window that can be short. But the idea of hope, I don't want to. I think if there is hope, I want to give it to them to some extent, to parents. So I'm informed in the ways of treating a rare disease. So and so in general, I think the idea was always uh, until the recent wave of gene therapies, it was a lot of repurposing of drugs. So understanding basically on, in a lab, understanding which drugs can help a disease, even though those drugs are not really, that is not their thing. They are not designated to that. They may help this and that disease. And I believe this is still a valid option. And I think that there are many rare diseases that should try this very feasible way of this my limiting the effects of the disease. Um, so you've got a lot of this, and sometimes you have a lot of kind of magic drugs that are again that are repurposed of something else. And we're working on Parkinson amongst other, and you have things that work there that nobody knew they would work. So I think that also there are times that it is also valid. So I'm not disrespecting this approach, but definitely the idea of understanding the mechanism and promoting a therapy that is designated for this disease has many effects. And I mean, mainly the idea that if you do it well, you can actually solve the problem. And so I would say there are many advanced ways and advanced therapies. Uh, we just name a few, although I'm sure I will forget other. But there are ways of bringing the missing enzyme for a patient in many ways, either by inhaling or by an infusion or whatnot. And there is the idea of bone marrow transplantation that is sometimes it's a treatment for immune disease, but sometimes you do this treatment of having a bone marrow transplantation for other illnesses as well. So let's say an illness that is called Krabbe syndrome, that is a terrible lysosome storage disease, and kids don't survive long. So one of an effective treatment is doing a bone marrow transplantation, and somehow it is kind of cross-passing the bone marrow, the BBB, the blood-brain barrier, and has an effect on the brain. So you got that. But in terms of gene therapy, you have all the viral vectors that are effective. And I don't know if you want to dive into it now, but just in general, let's say that the idea there is to implant a gene inside our genome. And there are synthetic biology drugs as well, such as antisense, uh, that are really efficient for such a disease. Um, Perhaps I'll explain a bit about them if you'd like, or later. So in general, we have in the world of gene disease and illnesses, we have to really just in a minute talk about genetics. So basically, if we look at our DNA, and it's kind of a spiral, element
Yeah, it's
of
two
molecular
alleles.
position to allele indeed. So, but if we look
Yeah.
at them and say that every gene inside of them is like kind of a blueprint to our body. So let's look at it not as a DNA, but as a book. And let's say that every page, there's kind of the menu for different type of the eye, the color of your eye. And every page has this kind of idea behind it, and it can create the color of your eye, or this of the structure of your bones, or the height of. And sometimes there is a word or letter that is missing, or is just kind of something was scrambled there, and there's a different. So this can create two things. One, nothing would happen, and we have hundreds of mutations like that, in which there is no phenotype. There is no kind of character. There's no illness. But sometimes the letter is important, and then it can completely kind of, you don't understand anything about the state, and there's no protein produced, or in other cases you understand it wrongly, so you produce a different protein. So one is called the loss of function. The fact that you don't produce any protein is a loss of function. And the other one is a gain of function. So if you kind of the body understand, you have to manufacture this toxin, that's a gain of function. And you have to treat each one differently. If it's a loss of function, basically you can add the gene. You just add it somewhere. And then you use viruses. Basically, viruses has the ability to put their genes into us and kind of say things to our body. So let's say the coronavirus was entering the lungs and saying to the cells, pushing his DNA into ours, and saying to ourselves, hey, don't eat me, make me more sugar, things like that. So basically the viral vectors, they use that. They take viruses, they kind of strip out all the bad stuff and just leave the backbone of the virus. And then instead of the unwanted genetic materials, we add what is needed. So in the case of my daughter, the gene, it was called ALTEL1. And in the case of XLA, which is the disease that among other in our pipeline, it is called the BTK. So basically you add this gene, you add a few kind of engineered promoters, inhibitors to kind of direct it well. And then you just let the virus go and implant DNA into our. And that's a very effective way to do that. First kids who were treated in that, the beginning was very poor because the first kids who were treated in that didn't survive. But we are about 30 years after, and those are amazing treatments, and we see really huge difference. So that's one thing, using vectors in case of a loss of function. But what do we do when there is a gain of function and we won't add the gene, it won't help? So we have to cut it somewhere. We have to cut the information, the wrong information that it provides. And for that, there's a nice treatment. It's called antisense. Basically, think that the DNA sends the messaging through RNA. We won't get into that, right? But the message is actually through via an RNA. And basically, this antisense thing is, think of it as kind of synthetic blankets that are shaped exactly at the shape of the RNA, the specific RNA. And they just cover it. And it dissolves after a while, so you have to do it every 3 months, 6 months. But you cut out the effect of the mutated gene. So that's in a nutshell. I would say the two major systems. There is CRISPR, that is something that is becoming clinically available, and it's something that I think there is still a while to see its full effect. Because CRISPR basically does know how to cut a gene and at say specific points, but it doesn't know how to add the missing element, not yet. So that is kind of the promise, and we will need to see that it happens. But those systems are very major. And then there are a lot of other additives that sometimes are more clinically proven and sometimes less. Stem cells as kind of, I don't know if there is the matter of just using stem cells and injecting them to areas. Those have remarkably uh, amazing kind of abilities. So for a lot of the neurological stuff, it is good. Yeah, so there's a lot of this is happening, and but there's much more. There's a lot to do. There's still a lot to do, and I think a lot of the illnesses still don't have the correct solution yet. So this needs to be addressed, but it is also a problem, and and I would say there are many things that stops it, or at least limit it, uh, and the science is not there yet. So we can do stuff, but there are many things we cannot do. And I would say the major thing we cannot do is targeting specific area and having kind of an effect there. This is something that is important to do at the technological level. But yeah, I think in general there's a lot to do in this world.
Definitely. So we cannot yet affect the specific areas in the DNA. Like we have like 20,000, I think, genes in our DNA, and we don't know yet how to affect the specific ones, or do we?
So I would say we do know how to kind of focus on a specific one. We do know how to express a specific one. There's a lot we can do, but we don't know how to reach an area that well. So let's say if you look at cystic fibrosis, okay, cystic fibrosis is a terrible illness affecting the lungs and just another crazy disease. There are a lot of effects. Enzyme replacement therapy is doing well there, and kids can actually grow now to a better age. But yeah, gene therapy would have been amazing if we could have done it. So why don't we do it? There are different reasons, but I think the main reason is that we just don't know how to bring viruses to this area. There's a lot of mucus, and there's a huge amount of immune cells that are just living there, waiting for something to come, a virus to come, and just like attacking. So Corona actually is, some say, human design to enter this thing, the lung, but it's not easy. And I think so. Yeah, let's say that. So that's one thing. We can actually, perhaps we can express the gene, but how do we enter the genome in the correct cell? And I think that is the most major thing. The other problem is the size of the gene, because those, let's say, if we think of those viruses as vehicles or missiles carrying specific, specific materials to an area or a specific gene. So you want to put the gene, you want to kind of play with it in terms of inhibition or in terms of promoting it. And so it can be rather large, and the viruses can carry only that much. So that's another problem. And then there's a matter of money at the end of it. And that's a third problem. Definitely it is up there, but I think it's up there at the moment. It will change. Drugs these days, let's say for rare disease, they have a humongous price. It's about $2 to $4 million for price for disease, and the promise is, all right, it's gonna help you for your lifetime. But I think and because of that is the price, right? They say, all right, we're gonna save the whole system that amount of money, so we take a bit less. That's what most companies say. Um, and I think it's all right. So that's what they want. But I think a major problem is that it's not always effective. So you've got problems like SMA. You have an amazing drug for that. That they put viruses, and SMA is spinal muscular atrophy. It's another terrible disease that kids, when they're born with neurological deficiencies, and they die very young. So when you treat that, and they know how to treat, they can put the virus. It works well. They put the virus. It just go through the spine, through the spine to the brain, affecting the brain, and just uh, infecting the cells, the correct cells there, and putting the DNA to the correct places, etc. And it works well. And the moment you do it, you're gonna, it's not gonna get worse for their life. But if you do it late, if you're not gonna do it on time, then what are you staying with, right? And it's sometimes a very narrow therapeutic window. So I know this story here in Israel too. It was only the beginning of this drug called Zolgensma, if I'm mistaken. So anyway, the two kids who were born, they knew that the birth's going to be with two kids with SMA. So they gave them the drug. But they didn't want to give it together because they didn't know how safe it is. So one got it when it was a month, and only after they saw, yeah, all right, that's all right, and there's no kind of side effects that are terrible, they gave the other kid. I don't know the exact age, but it was 4 months maybe. So you have a kid who is completely healthy, and the other kid who is not, because the neurological area deteriorate that fast. So that's a thing, right? Because if you're gonna ask for that much of money, you need to give a good solution. And so I'm not even talking about the money, about the research and all that. I'm saying that some of the problem of accepting the huge price tag is also that the success was not very high. Or from time to time, it wasn't high. Or if you go to a kid who is too old, it's not going to work. So I think that is changing, and there will be acceptance of the drugs, and the prices will go down, and the acceptance of the society will also, the insurance companies and of the government will also shift. So I think that's that as well. It's not only that the companies are greedy, and yes, there is that as well, but it's also the acceptance of the society of, hey, is it working, or is it not that good? So I think there is that question as well.
Stupid question here.
Good.
I'm listening to, yeah, I mean, like, I'm all for stupid questions, because I think that stupid questions are the ones that should come first. So there is this narrow therapeutic window in which you need to treat a human being. Can you do it in prenatal stage? I mean, like, while like the woman is still connected to a kid in her body, probably this is a more stable structure. Yeah. And if there is, yeah, a chance of genetic disorder, can you treat that like altogether before the kid is born?
I think it's an interesting idea, and I'll just tell you that. So we are working on this rare disease called Rabé, and we had a meeting with all the scientists here in Chicago, and I said, "Oh, sorry, stupid question," and I kind of asked more or less the same question, but they said, "No, you can't." But
Why?
from this stupid question, I started. So I made the connection with a doctor who is actually doing surgeries at embryonic stages. And I don't know if you can do the whole treatment, but can you? So with Krabbe, let's say, they are born almost, let's say, a month or two after you're gonna have neurological problems. So how you gonna? And it takes time to develop it. So how you gonna kind of bridge this gap? So what our thought is that perhaps you can take cells for bone marrow cells and perhaps prepare a drug before they're born. So that's kind of an open field, not an open field, but kind of a starting field of doing manipulation on embryonic stages. So I would say it can reach there. But reaching those, let's say, reaching his blood, that's a thing, because you cannot reach the umbilical cord. It's too dangerous. But there are manipulation of spine, of cardiac. Things are happening in the world in terms of embryonic stage procedures. And yeah, I think it's kind of a beginning of something. But it's still early, but as you say, it's... I think one day it will be a valid option. Yeah.
Yeah, that may sound weird or stupid, but this sounds so logical. I mean, you have already a system that connects mother to a kid.
Yeah.
Why cannot you infuse
Use the
something?
mother to reach the kid
instead of a virus?
Yeah. The idea of viruses, I think, when you want to modify genetics, is, I would say, it's the prevalent way. And it is, perhaps I heard somebody says, yeah, that's God's way to transfer genes. And I think, and you see a lot of use of trying to modify genes other ways, IPS, and we won't go into all the ways. But I would say the idea of viruses are definitely, at least I would say, the major way that we know how to do this thing. So even if you wanted to change something that the mother will give to the child, and we want to do it kind of long lasting, we would have needed, change his DNA because he has this mutation, or to change perhaps something with hair. Anyway, it's not such a simple thing to give a mother, because in what we do, and we use a virus called the lentivirus, and we have zero cases of SAE. It is called serious adverse effect. Really, that's breathtaking in my view. That, or let's say at the beginning, let's say in the last 15 years, you really don't have much. Not when you target stem cells, but if you target cells in other areas, let's say SMA, or let's say CAR-T. I don't know if you know that. That's kind of a gene therapy-based cancer treatment.
CAR-T, or for cancer. Yes, I know. Mm-hmm. Yeah, senescent cells.
Mm-hmm. So you have quite a toxic reaction. So it's not an easy thing for a mother. So I wouldn't think of changing the DNA of a mother, but the idea of having a kid that is perhaps developing neurological issues already at birth, and he's going to be born with those defects. I think one day we will think of that. It's not really in the near future, but I'm saying, yeah, if we can do stuff with a kid, if we can treat his heart, and we can straighten it, we can do things with his spine or his kidneys, so perhaps we can insert cells that will change the body. I just want to add one more thing about the mechanism of what we do. When we use a lentivirus, we don't inject the virus to the body. We do it ex vivo, meaning outside of the body. So let's say and there are different types. So let's say if there is this is called the RP, I think, reticulum pigmentosa. That's a blindness, a genetic type of a blindness. So you have a treatment for that, and you can fix that these days, and you actually fix it, and people don't get blind with this disease anymore. So yeah, but you have to put the virus into their eyes. Yeah, so to kind of, it's called in vivo. In what we do, we take basically we do it outside of the body on very specific stem cells called hematopoietic stem cells. Yeah, so those stem cells are basically what makes blood, hemato meaning blood. So those cells, they make everything that has to do with blood. And uh, and we um, and we take those cells that are in the bone marrow, we just take them outside of the body in a process called apheresis, not with the syringe or anything like that, but we just kind of blood collecting those specific cells, and we kind of introduce them to the viruses outside the body, and we introduce the new gene into those cells. So you take cells outside of the body, those hematopoietic stem cells you take from the body, you put it in this kind of robot, and you put it on one side. On the other side, you put the virus, and you just let them sit for 2 days. And the virus will just transfect, and they transfect the viruses into those cells. So then you're going to have, the DNA inside the cells, and you're going to have clean blood cells. You wash away all the residues of the viruses, and you're just going to stay with clean cells, but with a different gene inside. So, and then you put it in a simple infusion to the body. Those cells, they know to find their way to the bone marrow, and they start producing something. All right. So in terms of Nogi, who had no kind of white blood cells, they would produce good blood cells. But when we talk of other disease, let's say beta thalassemia, that has a lentiviral-based therapy, they create good red blood cells. So basically, you do a kind of engineering on those hematopoietic stem cells, but you do it outside of the body. So it's kind of really, really safe. Because if you're going to pour viruses to the body, you're going to have a toxic reaction. And there, it's not a complete clean SAE. And CAR T, let's say, they definitely don't have a complete clean SAE. But with this system that we kind of penetrate the stem cells, that's really remarkably, and perhaps, and I think if we tap into that, then this way of engineering stem cells, hematopoietic stem cells, the blood cells, and actually not only retreating a missing gene, but actually teaching those blood cells how to produce things, that is a major, major thing in the world of gene therapy and the world of clinical viability of this thing. Because if we talked about CAR T, then we teach T cells, those are blood cells, how to produce a drug that is actually can attack a tumor cell, right? That is CAR T. And that is something that is now, I think it's the first line of defense from different cancer types. But the idea of actually, and that's what we do now at Noga, the idea of actually creating a substance that is missing, not only by bringing back the missing gene, but by sometimes putting even 2 or 3 genes there, because you need a new kind of material in an area, is also something that is happening in the world.
I would love to ask you about Noga Therapeutics. So what is the story behind the creation of the company itself?
Yeah, so I think after doing a bit of work and trying to work on the disease of Noga, and again, she was alone in the world, was kind of because the way I financed it was through a crowd campaign. And so it was kind of a well-known story in Israel. I appeared on TV, and I don't know, you are also a bit acquainted with the field, so it's quite a high publicity one
Yes.
because you want to get noticed, basically. And so we had connections with the doctors, and they came over and said, "Oh, we are intrigued by the therapy. Perhaps we can do it to the syndrome or that disease." And we went on with it. What's really, but I think really the base behind it was for me that I wanted to continue staying in this field. And I think, I meet doctors, and rare diseases is something that if you're into it, then it sticks on you. And
Yeah.
for me, the connections with the parents, with the kind of this attempt to create hope in rare disease, but also in severe cases. And I think that is really the story behind Noga. But and we started, and we've been working on rare disease, and we have good results, and we continue doing the development of the drug. But I think so. At this point, the story behind Noga is getting a bit wider because reaching rare disease it's problematic on the side of it being something that it's hard to get funds for, and many companies really don't thrive on that. And my belief is that in order for us to reach rare disease, we need to have a more stable platform behind it that can, one thing, reach bigger diseases, but also try to create therapies that are good for a wide cluster of diseases. So let's say if we're talking about the lungs, there could be different genetic reasons for a disease, but if the outcome is similar, so we can just go and try to solve the outcome. So if we are thinking of a deficiency of ceramidase, which is something that you can relate to different type of rare diseases, and each one of them has its own origin and mutation that is actually the origin of the problem. But if we only know how to create acid ceramidase, then we actually control the whole situation, so we can reach different diseases and different syndromes with similar, and I wouldn't say phenotype, but similar pathophysiology. So really here where we go with Noga, and what we try to do at Noga, is to use this system of hematopoietic stem cells, but not only to restore a genetic mutation by restoring a gene, but by actually, I think we mentioned that, but by actually building a whole expression cassette that is capable of secreting an enzyme that is lacking with those patients. So that is what we do now, and we target neurological conditions. And when we target neurological conditions, we target diseases like that are what are known as ultra rare diseases. But we also use the same platform to try to reach and treat Parkinson's disease, which is a wider disease, of course, with a wider population and better ways to get resources. And I think as long as the prices of the manufacturing is high, and we really hope we can take down the prices of drugs for rare disease, but we really don't know if we can do it or not. Don't forget, it's not only us to make the decision. But I think if we can reach a cluster of diseases, then we can take down the price of the drug for this population and make it more affordable and reachable for patients, which is basically one of the biggest problems in the world of gene therapy, the high price.
High price because it's always a tailor-made solution. Yeah, so it's not like mass production.
Yeah.
And there are ways and attempts to make an off-the-shelf product that you can just send it everywhere. And so there are attempts to do that. And I think this is one of the, that can be one of those main things that will happen that will change the market. And so we are always looking at advancement in the field, and it's always, and the future is bright, but it usually takes time, and it's a long run. So yeah, I hope prices will come down, also because we target a bigger population, and also because the actual science will become more kind of rooted and more, I would say, it could be something that we can run from one patient to another. So if we can send a syringe to Africa, of course, it's cheaper than to open a site over there.
Yeah, that's very interesting because I see like two ways to approach solving rare diseases. So one is affecting a sector of diseases. Yeah, so like
Yeah.
many rare diseases. Yeah, like I don't know, like all the metabolic rare diseases, or like how can we connect that to Alzheimer? And another pathway is like democratizing the end of one, personalized medicine. This is another, I would say, direction in which some scientists are also working. Although I think that all of that will be combined,
Yeah.
and one will enable the other. Yeah, but it's interesting to observe how different people take different strategies trying to achieve a common goal.
Yeah, I think it is true that it is very combined, because N of one is one of those amazing projects where you fight to save a person, and this person is everything. And I definitely refer to that a lot. And I think that it's built on kindness of people more than on financial gain. And, when I did my project with Noga, so we started asking around, and then we understood, yeah, it's actually feasible. Yeah, you can do it. And we started talking with scientists and actually major people in companies. And, they were all, and I came with this notion that pharma is bad. And of course, all they care about is the money, etc., which is in many ways true. People are people, of course. And that's kind of the difference. It's always the difference, right? And I think the connection I had with scientists and with major executives in companies, they say, yeah, we'll work with you. I cannot do it officially, but let's, I'll make this connection and that, and let's meet with the scientist here. And so I think we need that. We need to do that. And we need this connection to people. And I think really the world of rare disease is really all about that, about uh, this thing that there is a child on the other hand.
And that's it. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed learning more about gene therapies and what Noga Therapeutics is developing. I'm immensely grateful to Noam Baumatz for agreeing to come to my show. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube, social media, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Bis bald!